or anyone, if anyone's even watching. My name is Keith, and I've been dealing with my psychological disorders while living in the Philippines. Since last year, the constant impression that I've been getting from my mental health professionals is that I have ADHD, and up until now, my doctors are still trying to figure out what mood disorders I have on top of that ADHD. So now that you know a little bit more about me, why am I here in front of you today? I noticed that there aren't a lot of videos about accessing mental health help in the Philippines. There's still a large taboo on that topic in the country, and even if younger generations are starting to crack down on that stigma ultimately still exists. So the harm of that stigma is that when people in the Philippines search for mental health help, they don't know what to expect. They usually go in blind. Personally, I went in blind when I was trying to ask for help, and I had no idea what to expect or even what to do. There are so many unanswered questions about mental health in the Philippines, so this channel is going to be dedicated to cracking down on that stigma by answering as many questions about mental health help as we possibly can in order to do just that. Disclaimer, I'm not a professional, so all the content that you're about to see is coming from a patient's point of view because I am a patient and I do have a lot of experience when it comes to mental health help in the Philippines. If you want to support cracking down on mental health stigma in the Philippines, please like, subscribe, and share if you want to. Now, without further ado, let's get on to the topic of today's video, which is Philippine psychiatric wards. What is a psychiatric ward? Psychiatric ward is a mental health facility that is dedicated to treating psychiatric disorders through both pharmacological and non-pharmacological means. This means that when you're in the psych ward, you ideally get both medication and therapy as a means of help. So when does the psych ward usually come into the picture? It comes into the picture when a person can no longer manage their psychological state in the outside world given all the triggers, the pressure, and the difficulties in one's environment. As a result, the psych ward's purpose is to keep you away from those triggers and help you focus on getting better. Because not many people know about psychiatric wards, how is it that I know about psychiatric wards? Well, the truth is, last year in October 2022, I entered a supposed mix of a depressive and manic episode where I was a danger to myself. During this time, I wasn't making the best decisions and I couldn't handle it anymore. So my family admitted me to the University of Santo Tomas San Lorenzo Psych Ward, which is in the UST campus. I personally wanted to get admitted and my family supported that decision. So I was admitted into that psych ward for 11 days. After that, I was able to get treatment as an outpatient instead. But during March of this year, I relapsed into a depressive episode which led me back to a psychiatric ward, but this time in the Medical City Psychiatric Ward in Ortigas. Honestly, I didn't know what to expect in both my stays in the psych ward because all psych wards are different. They have their own rules and systems in place. No two places are exactly the same, but there are some similarities, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. So these are 10 things that you should expect if you are looking to get admitted to a Philippine psychiatric ward or looking to admit a loved one in. Let's go! Number 1, you should know that it's expensive. There are a lot of options in terms of which psychiatric ward you can be admitted to, but the rule of thumb is the better the psych ward is, the more expensive it can be. I left a link down below of a list coming from the government about all the psychiatric facilities in the Philippines. Maybe if you're looking to get admitted, that list will be helpful for you. But basically, I chose UST and Medical City. So for my 11 days in the UST psychiatric ward, my personal bill reached about 60,000 Philippine pesos. And in the Medical City ward, I lasted 10 days in there. And for 10 days in that psych ward, my bill reached 100,000 Philippine pesos. Included in those bills were hospital food charges, medication fees, doctor's fees, and other laboratory work that they might ask you to do, such as blood work, ECG, x-rays, etc. I know that it can get pretty expensive, but there are ways to get the expenses down. One example is by getting a PWD card so that you can get a 20% discount. Plus, you can also ask your doctor for a personal discount on their fees. I know that my mom asked for doctor's fees reductions in both USD and the Medical City Psych Ward, and both times they worked. The doctors were willing to give us a discount, so give it a shot. Maybe you can get a discount and get that lower fee. Even if you do get those discounts, I understand that they can still be pretty expensive. So I suggest thinking about it like this way. If you're thinking about putting yourself or a family member into the psych ward because someone has self-harm or self-ending tendencies, then just think of it as an investment to keep yourself or your loved one alive. Even if it is financially difficult to get through now, I think that the outcome is pretty much worth it because of the care that a psychiatric ward is able to give you and the fact that it's also able to put you away from your triggers for a bit. It's a type of care that is unique to the psych ward and that you just cannot get through outpatient treatment. Number 2, you'll be assigned a resident doctor and a consultant. There are 2 scenarios that can take place when you're being admitted into the psych ward. The first scenario is that you already have an attending psychiatrist who works at a hospital that has a psychiatric ward. That's the fastest way to get admitted in the psych ward because they're just gonna give you an admitting order and they're gonna let you in and give you space within the psychiatric ward. A lot of the time, that's not the case because most of the time when people realize that they need to be admitted into the psych ward or their family member needs to be admitted there, it's usually an emergency because the psychological state of the person is already not being able to be handled by external outpatient help. As a result, what usually happens is the second scenario, which is that you're brought to the emergency room because it's an emergency. You're either a threat to yourself, a threat to other people, or both. When this happens, a resident from the hospital that you're going into will go to you, a resident from the psychiatric unit specifically. They're going to evaluate you and then turn you over to one of the hospital psychiatrists. Then that psychiatrist will be your consultant for your stay in the psychiatric ward, and the resident will be the one checking in on you and helping out with your treatment plan. Number 3, you don't know when you're gonna get out. Some people stay for less than a week. Some people stay for 10 days, some people stay for 20 days, some people stay for months, and some people stay for years. Point is, you will only be able to exit the facility when your doctor deems you to be safe around yourself. This means to say that you will only be able to get out if you're unlikely to hurt yourself or hurt others because of the medications that you're on, as well as the coping skills that you learned while you were inside the psych ward. So if you have to be better before coming out, how do they evaluate that? Well, they check your progress in many ways. For instance, they watch the CCTV to see your daily activities, how you interact with others, your eating habits, and more. Your resident doctor will also check in on you to see if you have a lot of self-harm or self-ending thoughts and what to do about that. It will also be checking in on your mood, trying to see if you're too high, too low, or just right. The resident doctor will also be attending to things that are specific to your disorder, such as how you're responding to your triggers, how you're relating to others, how you're coping with what's going on inside your brain, and so much more. Basically, all of this culminates into whether or not you can go home. And the moment that your doctor sees that you actually have a stable mood, then that's when they'll tell you that you can go home. But if you're not okay yet, then the doctors will know, no matter how hard you try to get out, they will know that you're not better and they won't let you go home. Number 4, you can't talk to anyone in the outside world. The only people you can talk to during your stay are your consultant, your resident, other patients, nurses, and other doctors. You're not allowed to text or call family members or friends because you're supposed to be focusing on your healing. Talking to anyone in the outside world may distract you and at worst trigger you, so the psychiatric ward is trying to stop that from happening in the meantime. The only time you can talk to someone in the outside world is through a family meeting, where your family can even choose to bring a friend or a significant other in with them so that they can speak to you. During the stage when you're ready for a family meeting, it's usually a sign that you're about to be released from the psych ward because they believe that you're already stable enough to be reminded of and interact with the outside world. So if you need anything like new clothes, toiletries, food, hence you need to tell your family that you need those things, you can indirectly talk to your family by writing down what you need on a piece of paper and giving it to the nurses to be able to text your family to send over what you need. So basically, you write something to the nurses and the nurses are the ones who do the communicating for you so that you get the things that you need while you're inside the psychiatric ward. That leads me to number 5. You will be around nurses and other medical professionals the whole time. These people deserve so much praise and appreciation. Nurses are the ones who are there to help you indirectly communicate with your family if you need something. They're also the ones who notify your doctor if you're breaking down or having an issue inside the psychiatric ward. They're the ones who administer your medications. They also check your vital signs every morning and every evening before you take your medications. Some patients do have medications between morning and evening, so they administer those too. Nurses are also the ones who handle your toiletries, skincare, glasses, and anything else that you're not allowed to keep in your room. This is just to ensure everyone's safety because a lot of people in the psych ward do have self-harming and self-ending tendencies. In UST, nurses are the ones who give you the food from the dietary department of the hospital. On the other hand, in the medical city ward, they have a different set of professionals to do that. But basically, someone is going to be there to give you food in an organized manner. Your food box will either have your name on it or your food will come in with a meal slip that says your name. So each meal is assigned to somebody. Basically, your in life is entrusted to these professionals and they honestly deserve such an applause for all the work that they do for your physical and mental well-being while you're inside the ward. Number 6. you will be given medication. If you're not willing to be medicated, or if your family is not willing to medicate you, then the psych ward probably isn't for you. The point of the psych ward is to be able to get you the medication that you need, so everyone there is taking medication because that is what's best for them. If you're not open to medication, then that's fine, but the psych ward may not be the best option for you then. I haven't seen a psych ward that allows people not to take medication, so if that's a thing, please comment down below. I would love to know more about that. Number 7, the things that you bring inside are controlled. They check absolutely everything you want to bring inside the psychiatric ward. The main rule is that there are no gadgets allowed inside. Jewelry also wasn't allowed because it can be used for self-harm tendencies. However, if you do have a new piercing, they're not going to force you to remove it. An example of that is this helix piercing that I have. I was able to keep it in for both my stay in the UST psych ward as well as the medical city psych ward, so I got to keep my piercing. When it comes to bringing your clothes, it depends on what the psychiatric ward you're in states that you should wear. In the UST psych ward, we were required to wear white scrubs, which is basically the same thing for everybody so that they can maintain uniformity in the ward, because uniformity was such a big thing in the UST ward. On the other hand, in the medical city psych ward, we were allowed to wear our own clothes provided that we follow the dress code. There weren't sleeveless shirts allowed, there weren't short shorts allowed, and they also didn't allow any clothes that had string on it because of self-harm tendencies patients may have. Basically, if you want to go to a psych ward, make sure that you know if they're going to be providing clothes for you or if you need to provide them by yourself and abide by a dress code. Now let's talk about the other things that you want to bring into the psych ward. Like, Keith, can I bring my book? Can I bring my notebook? What can I bring? What can I not bring? Well, there are things that you're allowed to bring in, but they usually have to be approved by your doctor. So basically, if they think something is good for your recovery, they're going to allow it. But if they don't think that it's going to be good for your recovery, they won't give you what you want, even if you want it really badly. This process applies to many things, such as books, pencils, stuffed animals, blankets, and more. That leads me to number 8, which is how there are privileges in each psych ward. In every psych ward, the system is unique, so I'm only speaking from my experience within 2 psych wards. So let's talk about UST first. For UST, fictional books originally weren't allowed for anyone because it might disconnect you from reality, but I got mine approved because I needed more stimulation in comparison to other patients because of my raging ADHD. So in that case, a book was approved to me because it was deemed necessary for my recovery. However, in the UST psych ward, if I recall correctly, everyone is allowed to write there, so you can just ask for a piece of paper and pencil and they're going to allow you to write. For food, you can eat any food that you wanted in the UST psych ward given 2 rules. Number 1, they can't have caffeine in it, and number 2, they should be requested on a Wednesday or a Saturday. So food was something that you can get so long as you follow the no caffeine rule and so long as you request it on the correct day. However, in UST, you weren't allowed to bring your own blankets, you weren't allowed to bring stuffed animals, and you weren't allowed to bring your own clothes because uniformity was such a big thing there. Hence, the most privilege that you get in UST would be getting any food that you wanted, being able to write, and as well as being able to read if they approve the books that you take with you. Now let's talk about Medical City. In Medical City, getting the things that you wanted were called privileges. There were 4 types of privileges. Number 1, book privileges. Number 2, writing privileges. Number 3, food privileges. And number 4, marketing privileges. So let's talk about these privileges one by one. First, book privileges is the ability to read a book or multiple books. These books have to be approved by your doctor, and only the approved ones will be given to you if deemed appropriate for your recovery. On the other hand, a writing privilege would be your ability to have a springless notebook sent by your family and write in it. They're careful with this because notebook springs and writing materials have sharp ends that can usually be used for self-harm tendencies. So they only allow composition notebooks and writing materials with dull points. Moving on, food privilege is the ability to ask your family for any food that you want. This is basically text your family members your food request, and your family members will send it over to you if they want to. If they don't want to, then you don't get food. Finally, a marketing privilege is when your family sends a budget to the occupational therapists, and you can ask a hospital staff to buy you something within the hospital. So the budget was 200 pesos a day. I'm not sure if this is a thing in other psychiatric wards, but in the Medical City Psych ward, you could have a budget sent over and you can spend it 200 a day at a time. Personally, in my stay in the psychiatric ward, I was able to get all 4 privileges within 3 days of staying there, which is pretty rare. It usually takes weeks for people to even just get 1 privilege, but my doctor was very cool about it. So ensure that you do talk to your doctors about these privileges privileges because they might not even know that you want these privileges, and they're pretty cool to have, so just ask your doctor about it. Now we're down to the last two. Number 9, there are barely any sources of mental stimulation. My resident doctor once told me that the purpose of the psych ward isn't to keep you mentally stimulated because, again, your brain is supposed to rest. And to a fault, the psych ward does get pretty boring. But I did have to cope with that because my ADHD makes me sad whenever I'm bored. So it was something that I really did have a hard time coping with. In the USD psych ward, you only had one daily activity prepared by the sole resident doctor that's assigned to everyone there, and it was usually arts and crafts. I remember drawing myself. I remember coloring. Another thing that you can do in the USD psych ward is accomplish pre-approved activities that the ward allows you to do, such as playing board games such as chess or Monopoly, or even playing table tennis there. You just have to borrow those from the nurses and then they're going to give it to you. Sometimes you could play approved songs as well as watch approved movies on the activity room in the USD psych ward. As someone with ADHD, I found it really difficult to stay mentally stimulated a lot of the time. So when I would lack mental stimulation, I actually broke down crying. I had such a difficult time coping with myself. And in order to get through this, I was able to request a notebook coming from my family. So whenever I would feel bored or whenever I would feel like I can't do anything, I would just usually request for a pencil and write it out. I would write a poem, I would write my thoughts, I would write anything. And it's something that I really recommend to you if you're gonna go to a psych ward. Let your inner thoughts flourish through onto paper so that you can be more aware of how you feel, how you think. And it's also really helpful to show to your doctor, to show your progress, or just generally share with them your thoughts and your thought processes. So if that was the system in the USD psych ward, what was the system in the Medical City psych ward? Personally, I thought that the system in the Medical City psych ward was much better because we had occupational therapy to take up our time. Occupational therapy is constituted by activities that would help build your coping skills when you return to the outside world. This is the main source of your mental stimulation while you're inside the Medical City psych ward. There's occupational therapy in the morning and one in the afternoon. Examples of activities that you may do here are painting, sports, baking cookies, cooking spaghetti, playing board games such as Pictionary, and so much more. However, for me, this wasn't enough. I did experience a lot of breakdowns because of sheer boredom and how sad it made me feel because I have ADHD again, and it gives me the constant need to search for dopamine when there was none. To cope with this in the Medical City psych ward, I was able to request a workbook from my family, which is the LSAT Logic Games book, where I would just solve logic puzzles to pass the time. So if you have any special need for mental stimulation, talk to your doctor about it and they may be able to sort something out in order to give you your needs. Again, the needs of each patient is unique, so you need to communicate your needs to your doctor in order to get the best help that you can get. Number 10, our final number. You will meet people you like, but you will also be around difficult situations at the same time. Honestly, I met some of the best people I've ever known within the psych ward. The atmosphere there is pretty different because for the most part, everyone is understanding and they want to know why you're in the psych ward with them. Since they themselves are in the psych ward, they know that you probably have a past that you're dealing with, and they know that you probably have a disorder that you currently are trying to handle. So given that, the psych ward really is a place in which people are highly compassionate. You don't have to share why you're in the psych ward if you don't want to, but if you do want to share that, it's a safe space to do so. Just make sure that the person that you're talking to asks you to share, or they verbally tell you that it's okay to share these experiences, because if not, they might get triggered. Just be considerate and give someone a trigger warning if you're about to talk about something pretty heavy. Talking to people by far is what will take up most of your time in the ward, apart from occupational therapy. You will see people from different age ranges, backgrounds, disorders, and you should make sure to be considerate at all times because of that. Even if you will likely enjoy the company of the people that you do meet, please still be wary about your safety around others because you will be around difficult situations still. People can trigger each other. People can have disagreements with one another. A common thing that happens in the ward is one person gets triggered and it creates a domino effect of other people getting triggered around them. This is something that we can't really avoid because as humans, it's natural to have a bad day and it's natural to have disagreements and it's natural not to react in the best way. So because of that, just be wary about the situations that may take place in the psych ward. Although it's a good gesture to want to help someone who is going through a breakdown, please know that it's not your responsibility to solve that problem for them. Like, you're in the psych ward to be able to help yourself, and you're only really responsible for your own well-being and your own behavior. If someone is breaking down and you care about them a lot, you can try extending help, but don't overexert yourself to the extent that it's already harmful to you. Trust that the nurses and the doctors are there to help your friends. So even if you do want to help out, you do want to be kind to others, you also want to have that balance and that boundary that you're not going to overexert yourself when you can't help anymore. So given that, please bear in mind that it's important to keep a balance between making friends and taking care of your friends, as well as keeping a lookout for yourself and taking care of yourself throughout your stay in the psych ward. That's it. Those were 10 things that you can expect from Philippine psych wards. I hope this video helped you, help someone out there, please. Please leave a comment down below if I missed anything. I would love to talk to you more about this topic and learn more about how we can spread mental health awareness in the Philippines, as well as crack down on that stigma. So if you want to see more from me, please like, subscribe, share, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it.